Over the past several years, we've all watched as Hollywood and the mainstream media have done everything in their power to try to gaslight people and lie to people and pretend that there's absolutely nothing wrong with the entertainment industry. If you don't like some of these projects, you just must be part of the problem. But it is now impossible to deny, with all the massive high-profile failures that we've seen for some of the biggest IPs around, whether it's Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Marvel, you name it. We have watched it happen in real time. So now that it is impossible to continue lying to people about the supposed success of these projects, they've decided they now have to double down on going after the fans. We've seen several articles over the last few weeks, especially in wake of the Acolyte's cancellation, popping up to blame toxic fans. And you know what? When you have millions of people watching something, are there going to be a handful of people that might take something too far, that might be a little deranged and insane on the internet? Probably. Maybe 0.001% of the people out there. The problem is when you start labeling people who simply don't like a show, have valid criticisms of a show, as toxic fans. And that's what you've been doing for years. And now this big hit piece in Variety is yet another pathetic effort to do so. Toxic fandom. How Hollywood is battling fans who are, quote, just out for blood, from social media boot camps to super fan focus groups. And here you've got a little montage of some projects, apparently, that they're going to talk about in this article. On August 28th, Amanda Stenberg, the lead of the Star Wars series The Acolyte, posted an 8.5-minute video to her Instagram about Lucasfilm's abrupt decision not to pick up the show for a second season. It's not a huge shock for me, Stenberg said. We started experiencing a rampage of, I would say, hyper-conservative bigotry and vitriol, prejudice, hatred, and hateful language towards us. Yeah, you forget to mention in this story that this comes weeks after Amanda Stenberg released a diss track about Star Wars fans, calling them racist for not liking The Acolyte. Weird how that's absent in this article, isn't it? In other words, The Acolyte was the latest high-profile target of toxic fandom, the catch-all term for when fan criticism curdles from good faith dissatisfaction into a relentlessly negative, often bigoted online campaign against either the project or its stars or creative leaders. In a franchise economy increasingly dependent upon established audience devotion to drive the bottom line, the threat of toxic fandoms poisoning that enthusiasm has become a seemingly intractable headache for almost every studio, and it's only getting worse. Think about what they're saying here. You know, we rely on people just artificially being excited for the next thing. Just give us the next thing no matter what. And when some people are critical of what they're getting, that can dampen down excitement about a project and really hurt us. People should be honest about what they're reviewing, whether they like it, whether they don't like it. That's one of the reasons people do not trust mainstream outlets, places like Variety, because they don't view them as authentic. They don't view them as honest, bottom line. Let's keep going. It comes with the territory, but it's gotten incredibly loud in the past couple years, says a veteran marketing exec at a major studio. People are just out for blood regardless. They think the purity of the first version will never be replaced, or you've done something to upset the canon of a beloved franchise, and they're going to take you down for doing so. Fans are going to voice their opinions on the shit that you put out. Heaven forbid. Oh my gosh, how unfair. Sometimes toxic fandoms behave reactively. A House of the Dragon episode featuring two female characters kissing, and an episode of The Last of Us focusing on a gay couple who both review bombed the practice of mobbing sites like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb. It's gained mainstream attention following the premiere of Star Wars The Last Jedi, and an entire YouTube ecosystem is devoted to declaring projects like The Marvels and The Boys woke garbage. An entire YouTube ecosystem, so channels that might not like the current thing coming out of this, it's devoted to labeling them this way, all in an effort to take these people down. They're so fucking mad that they're not as influential as they used to be, that normal people that just have a camera and a microphone and are in a corner of a spare room, they're upset that we have more viewers, that more people care about what we have to say about it than the mainstream media. That's really what this is. But I want to go back and correct a couple things here. House of the Dragon episode featuring two female characters kissing. Oh, a toxic backlash. Was there a toxic backlash when two male gay characters kissed in the first season? No, there wasn't. Because according to the source material, those two people, Lenore and Joffrey, they had a relationship together. That was an entire thing. Everybody knew about that. When you have Rhaenyra and Mysaria kiss in the way they did, that's the problem. It's not that Rhaenyra may have kissed a girl. In fact, in the book, there's rumors of her and Laena hooking up while she was with Daemon, stuff like this. So that's not what we're talking about here. People were upset because it didn't make sense. Rhaenyra's entire relationship with Mysaria, how they trust each other, or how she trusts her so much right away, that's a big problem for House of the Dragon Season 2 that people were very critical of. Not, oh, it's a gay kiss. No, there was no backlash to the gay kiss in the first one, was there? And when it comes to Last of Us, people had a problem that a character that, there was little nuggets here and there definitely pointing to the fact that he was gay. You devoted an entire episode to something that was not in the game. That's why people had a problem with those things and called it out. Just as frequently, the backlash begins before the project has seen the light of day. A Reddit megathread dedicated to outrage over Bridgerton casting a black woman. Social media epithets directed at actors of color cast as elves and dwarves in Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, and death threats aimed at Leslie Jones during the press tour for 2016's Ghostbusters. I can't speak to the Bridgerton shit. Let me speak to the Rings of Power thing. Do you know why people are critical of these shows before we do see them premiere? Because all you can judge it on is what the creators, the cast, and crew members say. And what they were saying was, hey, you know what? This isn't in the lore, but we're going to do it anyway because we don't care what Tolkien wrote. We want to make a modern day Lord of the Rings that everyone can see themselves in. It's all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you have a problem with that, don't watch our show, you racist. That's what people said. That's why there was backlash towards these things before they saw the light of day. Because all you can judge it on, same thing with the trailer, right? If all you had to judge something on is a trailer, people are going to judge it on a trailer. And when they see the actual thing, they may or may not change their minds. That's how it works. That's what press tours are for, so people can form opinions of things. You want press tours so that people are drawn in, that they want to watch that thing. Didn't go so well for Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Perhaps the greatest irony of this phenomenon is the disproportionate impact these toxic fandoms have relative to their actual number. It's weird you're saying that about the toxic fans. You basically label anyone that doesn't like someone as a toxic fan. That's the pattern that you've established. The real, very small minority are the people with pronouns in their bios, the people that don't know what gender they are yet, the modern audience that these things are supposed to cater to. That turns out to be the smallest portion of the fan base, doesn't it? The vast majority of any fandom are casual fans, says John Van Critters, VP of Star Trek brand development, who's been with the storied franchise since the 90s. The number of people who live and die in their franchises are very, very few, and then those who come after things they espouse to love with venom are a really, really tiny subset of an already smaller subset of fandom. It's just much easier to see it now. I don't know that it's really that much broader than where we were when things in 1995. It's just that the bullhorn wasn't there. So, it's just a small, tiny, insignificant portion of people, but we're scared to death of them. That's what this article is saying. And I agree with the first statement in general that the number of people that are diehard fans, they are small. However, those are the most important people. Those are the ones that are going to pay attention to everything. Those are the ones that are going to be picking things apart. Those are the ones that are going to be reviewing things all of the time. Those are the most important fans to appeal to, because if the hardcore fans don't like something, then a lot of the people that might not quite know as much about it, they might be turned off to it as well. So I think it's important you find a balance in who you're trying to appeal to there. For some, combating that bullhorn amounts to acting as if they can't hear it, particularly when it's negative, toxic conversation we don't even engage, says a TV marketing executive. Like with toxic people, you try not to give it too much oxygen. One principal concern is that reacting to these kind of attacks risks alienating fans who are unhappy with creative choice about a franchise but haven't tipped over into abusive behavior. So a studio may attempt to amplify friendlier voices instead, or reply to comments that are positive and elevate those things. In general, I think that that's probably the right way to go. If there's some people that are, giving you shit about your show, maybe don't attack those people. Maybe focus on the people that do enjoy it, while maybe taking, if it's an overwhelming amount of feedback that's negative, you probably should take that on internally and discuss whether we should make any changes or not. Still, toxic fandoms have grown so pernicious that they've become a fact of life for many, and so powerful that while talent executives and publicists will privately bemoan the issue, fear of inadvertently triggering another backlash kept several studios from speaking for this story even on background. As one rep put it, it's just a lose-lose. Man, they're just so tiny and insignificant. They don't matter. They're just toxic fans, yet we're scared to death of them. You should be scared of alienating your fans. You should be scared of upsetting your fans. The problem here is when it comes to them qualifying toxic as anyone who doesn't like something. That's really what they've attempted to do for the past several years, because they can't just ignore the problems. They can't ignore the backlash. They can't pretend that everything's just a massive success, because it's fucking not. So now they want to qualify anyone that doesn't like something. Well, you're just part of that toxic fandom, aren't you? Those who did talk to Variety all agreed the best defense is to avoid provoking fandoms in the first place. Yeah, no shit. Maybe make good things. Maybe don't disrespect the source material. Maybe don't intentionally try to drive controversy and shit all over fans. Whenever we do see that happen is when it turns poorly for these studios, for these projects. Studios will assemble a specialized cluster of superfans to assess possible marketing materials for a major franchise project. They're very vocal. They'll just tell us if you do that, fans are going to retaliate. These groups have even led studios to alter projects. If it's early enough and the movie isn't finished yet, we can make those kinds of changes. More studios should be doing that, and maybe get fans who actually know what they're fucking talking about to prevent some major, major problems that could occur for you. Several studio insiders say they often put their talent through a social media boot camp. In some cases, when a character is intentionally challenging a franchise's status quo. Listen to that. When a character is intentionally challenging a franchise's status quo. In other words, when we have a casting that we know is controversial or a character we know is going to be disrespectful to the source material, intentionally pissing off the fans, then studios will, with the actor's permission, take over their social media accounts entirely. Some particularly egregious cases, a direct response has been necessary. In 2022, after Obi-Wan actor Moses Ingram denounced the hundreds of racist messages sent to her. Oh yeah, and then she shared 4 of them and one of them was racist. Yeah, you know, the hundreds and hundreds that we're sure are out there. What did Star Wars decide to do? They tried to gaslight everyone, and they tried to deflect all of the blame for the dogshit Obi-Wan Kenobi series on toxic fans. You're just a racist if you don't like this series. How dare you? That went poorly for them. So I don't know if this is the best example you'd want to bring up. Certainly didn't help things for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, certainly didn't help things for Lucasfilm in general, and only served to further the idea that these people will not take that criticism and they will try to deflect it all on bigotry. Later that year, the cast of The Rings of Power condemned the relentless racism, threats, harassment, and abuse some of our castmates of color are being subjected to on a daily basis. And then they would go on to say they haven't experienced the same hostility in advance of Season 2 that greeted its 2022 debut. I have another theory. Maybe, just maybe, you drove away a large portion of the fan base with what you did by 1, blaming anyone who didn't like the show as racism, and 2, because the show is so fucking bad, no one wanted to come back. In fact, we now have all the data that proves Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power lost half of its audience. So maybe, just maybe, you're not experiencing the same hostility because a lot of people gave up on this massive pile of dog shit and aren't paying attention to it anymore. There is one other way to handle toxic fans on the internet. Stay off it. I'm not online, so I'm protected, says frequent Marvel star Elizabeth Olsen. Generally, it's a lot of positive experiences making kids happy. I ignore the other stuff. That is probably the best way to handle is not respond to each and every person who doesn't like your show and try to gaslight everyone to think that they're a fucking racist because they don't like your dog shit. The mainstream media and Hollywood, they are linked, and they have been trying to blame fans for these failures. This is just yet another pathetic attempt. After so many very public, very high-profile, embarrassing failures for some of the biggest franchises out there, this is just yet another attempt for them to kiss Hollywood's ass and pretend that, well, the reason these things are failing, it's just because of those bigots out there. And that happens to be anyone that doesn't like these shows. Just fucking pathetic. What do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comments section below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.